Right.
People, they're under a lot of stress. For example, their communication skills are lacking. They're being very reactive.
Mm.
Um, and often their reactivity is just based on stress. Sometimes it's based on assumptions or stories that they're making up. If you actually look at the history, these medicines have been used for thousands of years.
Yes.
And it was all shut down in the 70s by the Nixon government in the States. All
Hmm.
the research stopped, everything. It's actually a tool that could potentially be used, for example, between two business partners. If
Mm.
they're at odds with each other or kind of getting disconnected from each other.
Hello, team. Today we're exploring a topic that's undergoing quite a dramatic transformation. At least that's the way I see it. It's the conversation around psychedelics, and it's moving from the fringes to somewhat of the mainstream, and even in the world of high performing executives, where they're
Mhm.
looking at these substances no longer just for recreation, but as a powerful tool that helps to break through the mental barriers, even enhance creativity and clarity. And here to guide us through this somewhat complex topic, as well as promising landscape, I have to say, we're joined by coach and educator Laura Watson. Laura, welcome to the ET Project. Great to have you on.
Oh, thanks very much for having me, Wayne. It's great to be here today.
I'm quite excited to explore this. It's a fascinating topic based on the research that I've been doing, but I have to start with a disclosure. I'm coming to this conversation as a complete novice. I'm not a doctor. I have no background either academically or personally in psychedelics. So I'm going to be asking questions that I hope our listeners would ask. And I'm really looking to you for your guidance through our discussion today. So many people,
Absolutely. Fire away. I'll do the best I can to answer your questions.
well, to that point, I mean, many people probably know you as a business or a leadership coach, which makes the deep dive into this subject somewhat interesting. What is the connection that you have through your coaching work and your expertise in the realm of psychedelic medicine?
Oh, well, great question. In my work with business leaders, executive leaders, I've always worked with them around understanding I'm gonna core issues to what's going on in their sort of life and leadership.
Right.
People, they're under a lot of stress. For example, their communication skills are lacking. They're being very reactive.
Mm.
Um, and often their reactivity is just based on stress. Sometimes it's based on assumptions or stories that they're making up. And sometimes they're even based on core wounds that maybe they're aware of. And I realize I'm starting to sound a little therapeutic here, but um, core wounds that maybe they've experienced
Mm.
earlier in their life that never got healed. So there's a
Right.
whole variety of things that can contribute to their ability to lead themselves and others effectively. And so
Mhm.
I've always seen those issues as symptoms to a
Right.
core issue. So I've
Okay.
always tried to uncover the core. And what I discovered in psychedelics is there's a core under the core. So, what I thought were core issues like limiting beliefs and core wounding, for example, they're still core, but there's a layer underneath that that few of
Mm.
us have access to. And so, what the psychedelics do is they give us access to something we didn't have access to before,
Right.
and which gives us an opportunity to build self-awareness, an opportunity to heal some of those core wounds,
Mhm.
look at things from a completely different perspective, open
Right.
up possibility in our thinking. So that's really the link that I see and that I'm bringing forward by integrating these tools into my coaching practice.
Excellent. It's really a conversation that's starting to explode in the mainstream in many interesting ways. I mean, we can see sports people like Mike Tyson from boxing, Aaron Rodgers from the NFL. Um, we've got people like Oprah, even Tim Ferriss, who's a big funding element in the research field. We're starting to see a lot more discussion, I guess, is what I'm saying, around what used to be somewhat of a taboo topic.
Mhm.
We probably, I'm a baby boomer. I grew up through that era of people talking about magic mushrooms as a negative and talking about LSD and ecstasy and, all the drugs and the negative connotations. And now we're seeing it come into the medical sphere.
Mhm.
Perhaps a good starting point here is trying to define exactly what we're referring to when we talk about psychedelic medicine. What's the application, the purpose of bringing this into the medical sense?
Well, and before we talk about application, I think the first part of your question, which is what are we talking about with this
Yeah.
overarching term called psychedelics?
Mm,
Because like yourself, when I was first introduced to this, I thought mushrooms. I thought LSD, and I had the same baggage. I grew up with the TV commercials. This is your brain on drugs, and you're watching an egg frying in a pan. So
exactly.
and I had never touched any of this stuff.
Mm,
It was taboo, off limits. It was not within the realm of anything I ever thought that I would be engaged in. That was counterculture, bad, all that taboo stuff. Um, Now I'm in a way different place. But let's talk first of all about the categories of
mm,
psychedelics. There are three primary categories. The
okay.
first category is your classics. Your classics are things like your magic mushrooms,
Mm,
the LSD, for example. And those types of substances are what's called non-specific amplifiers. So think about whatever's kind of going on inside you, they kind of amplify it.
mm, mm,
So, and that's where people, and you hear the term sort of bad trip sometimes, because if you're, and people might say, "Oh, I tried mushrooms once and it made me anxious." Well,
yeah.
it didn't actually make you anxious. What happened was it amplified anxiety that was already there.
Mm,
So, uh, so there's that classification of psychedelics, which are your classics. Then there's a second category called your empathogens and entactogens. Your empathogens are psychedelics like MDMA. The street name for MDMA is ecstasy. There's
mm,
another one, 3-MMC. And these types of medicines are heart opening medicines. They're empathy opening medicines because what they do is they work on the serotonin
mm,
receptors in our brain. And what they do is they turn off the judgment center in our brain that sits inside the amygdala. So inside the amygdala, which is a kind of this little walnut in the back of our brain,
mm,
we have this default mode network, and it's where our inner critic lives. And that inner critic plays a very important role. It's there, he's there to keep us safe and say, whoa, 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 don't do that. Which way back in our caveman days was really helpful because it
mm,
prevented us from getting eaten by a lion. But now the amygdala and that default mode network and that inner critic can hold us back because of perceived fears. So these medicines are an opportunity and a tool for turning that off temporarily. And when
mm.
we turn the judgment and that filter off temporarily, new possibility and creativity opens up in our thinking. So that's that second classification. The third classification of psychedelics are the dissociatives. And so those are things like ketamine. And ketamine clinics have been sort of popping up everywhere. And ketamine kind of takes us, out to the universe in a really extreme way. And for people who have experienced trauma, like big T trauma, for
Right.
post stress disorder, it gives an opportunity to disconnect from self while having someone lead you through a guided conversation. Again, to be able to open up new pathways of thinking
Mm.
and opportunities. And that's another element that I find fascinating about the psychedelics is it's not just the psychedelic experience itself that's powerful. The other fascinating piece about this is there's that it opens up this window of time in our brain where new neural pathways can literally get rewired.
Right.
So people, for example, with brain injuries, they're using psychedelic assisted therapies and experiences that are actually helping them rewire their brain and get functionality back that they lost in their brain injury. So it's a fascinating field with all kinds of applications, in addition to the application that you were mentioning, which is performance enhancement.
Mm. And I guess part of therefore what's helping the whole topic around psychedelics is also the deeper understanding we have around the brain, the mind, the whole neuro exploration over the last couple of
Mm.
decades. Is that a fair correlation? The two are sort of helping each other.
Absolutely, because once upon a time we believed that, once you reached adulthood,
Yeah.
that the brain was static and
Mm.
wasn't going to change. And then we discovered neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to rewire itself
Mm.
and adapt and change. And you can do that without psychedelics. You can do
Right.
that just by repeating a behavior. So I liken it to muscle memory. So
Mm.
when you practice something over and over and over again, like a particular skill, like a dancer or an athlete, a tennis player, for example, when you're working out, you're building muscle memory just because of the repetition of the
Right.
activity that you're doing. We can change our thoughts by, and that's where affirmations come into play, by repetitively thinking something new.
Mm.
And so if we've got a negative thought pattern, we can very slowly over time rewire that and change that thought path
Mhm.
by thinking over and over and over again a positive thought or an affirmation.
Right.
Or we can do it with lightning speed with psychedelics.
Yeah.
And that's what I really like about it is we don't often have the discipline
Mm.
to stick at something for a long period of time. So although it's possible, it's
Right.
difficult. And so these are tools that can help us expedite the process.
Mm. And as you said, by being able to switch off the default network, or the medicine itself helps to fast track, as you're saying. So quite an interesting field. What I was really struck by when we first came together and we started talking was I've been coaching for a long time and mentoring for a long time. I've never heard of combining the application of psychedelics into my coaching. So I'm really curious, how do you bring this particular medical application into your coaching? I mean, is there a process? How do clients come to you and say, okay, I have a need. I need to talk about psychedelics. I mean, what's the
Well,
whole process here?
it's a careful conversation.
Mm.
That's for sure. And my role is to guide people. So it's really a one-on-one type of conversation. Is
Yeah.
this a tool that could be a fit for them? And I'm here to guide them
Hmm.
in their decision process. I'm not here to say, yeah, absolutely, you got to do this and let's get on with it. I'm there to as their guide. So
Right.
I've done a lot of research and learning in this area. I've been gathering some materials, um, educational materials and resources in this area so that I can educate people and help them make informed decisions if this is
Hmm.
something that they think that they want to step into. But obviously, it's a very careful conversation to
Right.
have. It's illegal still in many locations
Yeah.
and states. And so that's an important consideration. So I'm really here as an information provider to help them realize that it is a possibility.
Mm.
And if they're going to pursue it, how do they pursue it carefully and thoughtfully?
And I think that's an interesting point in itself is that in many places, depending on which particular psychedelic medicine you're using, it's still illegal, right? So it's something that you do in a clinical setting rather than something you would try recreationally, hoping for that outcome, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely been recreational use out there. There's ceremonial use. I mean, you can go to retreats in various
Yeah.
countries and participate in this sort of thing. And there's a movement happening to find a middle ground because, there is psychedelic assisted therapy now.
Mm.
So you can work with a psychotherapist and who's been had received special training, special certification, special licensing from their government to be able to provide these kinds of tools. So, those resources are available typically to people in more extreme circumstances as far as they're experiencing PTSD. They have treatment resistant depression, anxiety. They have to demonstrate that other treatment modalities have not worked for them. They have to get
Right.
special permission to use these tools and work with people in very special settings in order to make
Mm.
that happen. But it is a possibility.
Okay. I mean, some of the safety protocols I've read about sound quite interesting. Have you had much experience with those or with the application yourself?
Well, there definitely have to be safety protocols in place. People, for example, if they're on medications of some kind, you
Hmm.
have to be mindful of whether or not the particular psychedelic medicines are going to conflict with medications you may already be taking. And
Right.
there's people out there with expertise in that area who can provide consultation on that. So make sure that if this is something that you want to pursue, you want to make sure it's not going to conflict with any other medications that you're already on. It makes sense to have a consult with your doctor to say, I'm considering this. If your doctor is familiar with these types of medicines, then they may be able to provide consultation about potential conflicts or not. And if they're not educated in this area, then there certainly are people out there who can provide that kind of consultation.
Right. So when I was looking at your website as a starting point to understand more about your practice and what you do, you have an ebook on the psychedelic topic, and I was quite intrigued by the number of um, discussion points or the number of different platforms where people are talking about this application. What's the current research revealing? Like if we look at 2024, 2025, is it now being more of a medically accepted application or a solution? Is that the general trajectory that we're finding this is moving in?
That's yes, it's all in evolution.
Right.
It's gaining, research is happening.
Yeah.
It was all shut down in the 70s. There was all kinds of research happening into the
Right.
benefits of these medicines. And if you actually look at the history, these medicines have been used for thousands of years.
Yes.
And it was all shut down in the 70s by the Nixon government in the States. All
Hmm.
the research stopped, everything. And yes, it's just been in the past 20 years that this has been revisited and very specific clinical trials and it have been followed and put in place. And so research is happening with great outcomes happening for people with PTSD, anxiety, depression, even MS. Um, so, so yes, and the research is underway. It's happening. And if there's a great resource, actually, it's a newsletter called Tricycle Day that's put out from the States. That's a great information resource for what's happening and the research studies that are being done, the different states in the United States that are having this conversation in their local governments and starting to uh, pass legislation that is allowing for this. So
Mm.
it's definitely in a renaissance. The goal in the community is to get it out of the medical community
Right.
and to make it accessible to the everyday person
Okay.
with guidance. But it is a goal within the psychedelic community that they're powerful medicines that need to be treated with respect and carefully, but they don't have to be necessarily used in a medical setting. And so
Mm.
the goal of the people doing this work is to get it mainstream.
I could imagine that's still quite a leap from where we are today, given how long it took, if you look at marijuana as a substance, how long it's taken
Mhm.
in the US. In many countries, it's still illegal, but in many states across the US, of course, it's now legalized. But how long that took to become
Yes.
mainstream, I can imagine psychedelics is probably a big step further. But yeah, will be
It's a
interesting.
big step,
Yeah.
definitely a big step, ways away, definitely more research is needed. And the research that's already happening and been done is very, very promising.
Mm.
And there are definitely a lot of people trying to get this to be, are working towards getting this more mainstream.
I can imagine there's multiple phases of impact from the psychedelic treatment. Um, if I think about somebody who takes drugs, they have that immediate short term awakening, if you like, or opening up. Is there a longer term process here that plays out through the application of psychedelics?
Well, I think it's important for people to understand that psychedelics are not the thing.
Mm.
Psychedelics are a door opener
Right.
to, right? So they um, we can gain great insights from an experience. We can experience some healing from
Right.
core wounds that we were talking about earlier, but it doesn't, they're not a magic bullet that fixes everything.
Mm.
So that's why guided experiences are so important, so that you have someone there to keep you, help you with your mindset going
Okay.
into the experience. Make sure you're in a very positive mindset. You're going in with clear intention about what you want to accomplish
Mm.
in a particular, journey, if you will. And then debriefing that experience afterwards. But where the real transformation takes place is in the integration afterwards. So you open the door in the experience, but you got to walk through the door and
Yes.
then take those insights and bring them into your everyday life. And so that's where I'm combining it with the coaching. So
Right.
if someone has one of these experiences, then I understand the experience. I can help them in their preparation beforehand. And
Hmm.
then coaching is all about their integration afterwards so
Yes.
that they get the full value, of, that experience.
What are some of the things you're seeing as a result of your clients working in this process? Is it having an impact greater than what you'd experienced outside of the psychedelic medicine?
Well, yeah, absolutely. So I was coaching a husband and wife. They had separate businesses, and so I coached them individually.
Yeah.
And they've been married for 30 years. He has ADHD, he struggles with focus.
Right.
He had a habit, for lack of a better term, of when something gets um, an avoidance habit, I'm going to call it. When something feels challenging,
Hmm.
his approach was to kind of hide, try to ignore it, abdicate the issue off to somebody else, and never really own it and take it on. That's a problem for a business owner. That doesn't create for some very good dynamics in your company. And so he ended up having a journey and he was transformed. In my conversations with his wife afterwards, she said that he was a different man. That and one of the big, he was more positive,
Hmm.
optimistic. But what the biggest change for him was he took ownership of his life and he took ownership of his business in a very different way. So
Okay.
he was in business for 15 years. I had coached him for a couple of years at that point. And through all of I'm going to call it talk therapy, but coaching is a conversation.
Yeah.
He had made incremental changes that were good and going in the right direction. And then he had a journey that just took him leaps and bounds in his progress.
Mm.
And that's what people are finding in the clinical settings and in more traditional therapy settings is you can do talk therapy for years
Yeah.
and then you can have a single psychedelic experience and what the issue that you were dealing with is just gone. And that's what I think is so compelling. I'm reminded actually, one of the resources in my ebook is the Netflix series called How to Change Your Mind.
Right.
And Michael Pollan wrote a book with that title. He's the one who's interviewed in that series. I found that series absolutely fascinating. And he shares a story of a gentleman who is suffering with OCD,
Mhm.
obsessive compulsive disorder, and it was crippling him. He was so severe, he couldn't get through it. He couldn't be productive in any way during his day because his OCD was so bad.
John
And
Watson.
he had struggled with that for years and done therapy and everything else. He ended up using psychedelics, and the psychedelic it took away the OCD. He could he could function
Right.
and not just function, but live a normal life again
Mm.
after just a single journey. So for something to have that much power so fast, again, I think it's just an incredible tool that we can't ignore.
You just highlighted an important point there. I'm wondering how mainstream is it cost wise? Like, is it affordable to have the treatment? Is it something that we would have to save for to be able to go and put ourselves into a clinic environment?
Well, and that's difficult to answer. I mean, there are, you can go off to Costa Rica and attend a retreat for $5,000.
Okay.
You can find probably someone on the street corner who will, sell you a little bit of, some shrooms and away you go and you've spent under $100. Um, And then you can go to a clinical setting. And in Canada, where I'm based, what that looks like is you have to go to a clinical setting. You have to again demonstrate that the you have treatment resistant depression, for example. All
Yeah.
these other things that you've tried haven't worked. You have to apply to the government for special permission to go this route, which I think is about an $850 application fee. And then once your application is approved, then you're working in a clinical setting, and that's about $5,000 as well.
Okay.
So
Okay. Yeah.
it really ranges. And to be honest, there are people, I'm going to call it sort of in the underground, if you will,
Sure.
who, if you can find them, they're out there, and you can probably experience something like this with a guide for around $2,000.
And I
So
know
it's in
my
that
next
range.
question is it's always going to be very difficult to say, but typically one treatment versus half a dozen treatments. Like what's your experience? Is this an ongoing um, area that people need to continually be treated with, or is there a black and white solution?
I wouldn't say it's black and white. I think, but um, and it's not something necessarily that you would be engaged in forever.
Right.
But do think about it like peeling away layers of an onion.
Mm.
So you can have a single experience and get some amazing insights and some really powerful healing out of it. And that with integration afterwards, and
Yeah.
you've probably taken off the outside layer of the onion.
Okay.
And so then you can think about probably, within a few months or, 3 to 6 months, maybe a year, undergoing a second experience that's going to peel back another layer of the onion.
Mm.
So kind of depends on how many layers you got to your onion
Right. Right.
and how deep
Uh,
you want to go.
yeah, I know it's an impossible question because everyone is going to be a unique situation. So, but just as a guide. So, if our listeners are out there and they're somewhat curious, maybe cautious, but open-minded, what's a piece of information or some guidance as a first step that you would recommend if they're wanting to learn more?
Do some research. There's lots of information online. I mean, they could come to my website for example, get that ebook that you downloaded. As you acknowledge, I got a lot of resources in that ebook.
Yes.
Everything from Michael Pollan's How to Change Your Mind to Oprah's podcast to CBC, which is one of our Canadian newscasters.
Yeah.
All kinds of resources in that ebook. Search on YouTube, look at MAPS, MAPS. That's the Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelics.
Mm.
And they're one of the key players who are
Right.
pushing for research and policy change in this area. So they're a great place for information. Tricycle Day is that newsletter that people
Mhm.
can sign up to for information as well. This is definitely an area that you don't want to take lightly, and you want to get some education and some information before making these kinds of decisions.
Right. You mentioned earlier that one of the goals of the community is for it to be more mainstream, more accessible. Where do you see this in 5 or 10 years from now? Like, what do you hope will happen with the application or the accessibility of it?
Well, my hope actually is that there will be that the legislation will open up,
Hmm.
that there will be certification training available in this area. I think there's a medical use, a therapeutic model
Mm.
is valid, but I don't think that only people who are severely ill, um, should be the only ones able to access this. I think that, so I would love to see certification legislation and certification in place where people can get get the training to be able to deliver these medicines to the public safely, so that the
Mhm.
public doesn't have to go underground
Right.
to gain access to these kinds of things.
Mm.
So they can be used, safely, carefully. They're very powerful tools that, and like you acknowledge, athletes are already using them. There's all kinds of information online about microdosing. Um,
Mhm.
so let's bring it out from behind the curtain,
Right.
and kind of like the marijuana legislation, it was underground for a very long time and eventually
Mhm.
was legalized. Let's
Yeah.
legalize it, and let's create certification programs that allow people to learn how to use this safely so that they can share this with people safely.
Mm. Certainly, with the momentum it's building, it seems to be heading in that direction, but it needs that broader uptake, I guess, and that's hopefully where we're heading. One of the common themes in your work, I know, is around communication effectiveness, and I know there's somewhat of a link between the application and using the psychedelic medicines to helping people communicate better. When we talk about communication, are there blind spots that we see as a common um, trait of many of the executives you work with?
In regards to the communication practices, well,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, we're kind of switching gears here, but
Mm.
communication effectiveness is something that I've been fascinated with and practicing for 25 years. Um, because it's communicate the effectiveness of our communication, the quality of our
Mm.
communication actually impacts the quality of our relationships, because we're communicating with other people.
Correct.
And so, and our communication can actually make or break our relationships. So one of the big blind spots I see in executives and in anybody is uh, unintended ways that they break down the communication process.
Mhm.
So and again, I've got an ebook on my website that talks about, communication. But most leaders and executives, their days are spent solving problems,
Mhm.
and they're so their employees come to them, their clients are coming to them with problems. And often I find executives are putting themselves in the role of thinking that they need to be the fixer of all the problems. And so then that shows up in their communication. Someone comes to them with a problem and they're trying to fix it, or to console it, or they're critical of the person bringing this issue forward. And there's actually, I call them the dirty dozen. There's 12 typical ways that executives unknowingly shut down the
Right.
communication process with people, whether it's their spouse or whether it's their employees. They don't mean to do it, but they're doing it. And
Mhm.
so when they can learn that dirty dozen and realize how they're communicating in a way that's actually contrary to their goal and objective to have effective communication, then they can stop doing that, for one. And then they can learn effective communication skills that are going to bridge the distance between
Mhm.
themselves and the people that they're working with, and also can actually get them out of that role of thinking that they need to fix all the problems. Because if they believe, first of all, that people are capable of solving their own problems, they can actually change their communication process to facilitate problem solving in other people. And
Yeah.
when they do that, they build their people, they build their resilience, they build their skills, and they don't make people dependent on them to coming for the answers all the time, which
Mm,
actually frees them up to go off and do other things.
yeah. Being a long-term leader, I understand the stresses involved with leadership and communication being one of the big challenges. I'm wondering, have you seen any form of correlation between how you can use the psychedelic treatment to help you de-stress to become that better communicator? Is there any, or is that too much of a stretch um, to try and tie
No, I
those
don't.
two together?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's a stretch at all because one of the things that the psychedelic experiences can achieve is de-stressing you.
Right.
And what happens when we're stressed, as I'm sure you realize, is we can't be stressed and logical at the same time. Our brains just don't work that way.
Mm,
So if we're stressed and we're being emotional, we're being reactive. So I call it reactive leadership.
yeah.
And so a psychedelic experience can, for one, decrease the stress. And if you've decreased your stress, then the logic can come back in. You can show up in a different way in your interactions with others.
Mm,
And one of those empathogen medicines that we talked about earlier is called 3-MMC. And that's a very interesting medicine because it actually helps open up communication. It opens the heart, it opens up the creativity centers in our brain, and can actually facilitate more communication between people. So it's actually a tool that could potentially be used, for example, between two business partners. If
mm,
they're at odds with each other or kind of getting disconnected from each other. There's a lot of conflict showing up in the relationship. Using a medicine like 3-MMC guided with someone for a day could actually help them as business partners reconnect, communicate, understand each other at a level they've probably never experienced before.
that's
So
kind of where I was
absolutely
going
there's a
with that
tie there.
question. Yeah, I had a vision um, in thinking about that, we've seen mindfulness and meditation become more accepted practices within a company culture. And I was just
Mhm.
wondering, did we ever see that as a future possibility where the company retreat of their top 1% of executives maybe go through a very refined micro session using psychedelics as a form of treatment to open people up to really build um, that relationship, yeah, improve the communication.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm aware actually of the psychedelics being applied to leadership masterminds.
Okay.
So, right there's an opportunity there to, a mastermind already brings a group of leaders together. The
Mm,
idea being that each person in the mastermind has an opportunity to, share a issue or a challenge that's going on for them, and then we're using group think to support that person in thinking through their challenge. Well, what do you think might be possible if we took that to a whole new level, using something like 3-MMC, having everyone in that room having their ego set aside, having
mm.
the creativity center of their brain opened up? Can you just imagine the kind of conversation and masterminding that might take place if a group of 10 top-notch business people all supporting each other in an environment like that?
Yeah. I,
I've
I'm
seen it in,
I'm struggling to really get my head around it, but I can imagine the possibilities of what could be what might happen. I do think it's a fascinating field, like I said at the outset, and we've only scratched the surface on the whole topic, but um, let's hope that there is further progress made and it does stay on the radar and doesn't disappear again. I think we're heading in the right
Mhm.
direction. We're really fascinating, Laura. Great conversation around this. where's the best place for people to connect with you and find out more?
Yeah, well, I guess my website's probably one of the best places, venturecoaching.ca.
Mm.
And like you said, I've got a number of freebies there, one of which is the information resource around the psychedelics piece. And my phone number is on my website, obviously, and a form if they want to reach out and talk to me. I'm on LinkedIn as well. So,
Okay.
Laura Watson or Venture Coaching, they can find me there.
Hmm.
And I'm always open to a conversation. So, I'm not saying psychedelics are the be all and end all. But I am seeing these as an opportunity and a
Yeah.
possibility. I'm certainly, as with you, hoping to see them go mainstream. And I have a little bit of knowledge in this area, and I'm always open to having a conversation with people about it.
And we should clarify as well. I mean, you're not only focused on psychedelics. So you have a coaching practice, venture coaching, and you're based.
Mhm.
Where are you based? We should clarify that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've been coaching for over 20 years.
Mm.
So I actually come out of the counseling arena. I have got a master's degree. 20 years ago, I shifted into coaching. So I've been coaching business owners and C-suite executives for 20 years now. So yes, absolutely. I've got a active coaching practice that has nothing to do with psychedelics whatsoever. And I'm located in Alberta, Canada, and I work with people all over North America remotely now that Zoom has become a thing over these past
Ah,
few
very,
years.
very
So
good.
locals I get to see in person, but people elsewhere I work online with them, and sometimes even travel and end up seeing them in person. So yeah, it's not just psychedelics. Like I said, they're just a tool. I have many tools that I draw from when I'm working with leaders.
Yeah. As we said the first time we connected, Alberta and Calgary, Banff are on my bucket list. So one day we'll probably
Mm.
catch up for a coffee in person. So I look forward to that. But
I
Laura, great
very much
conversation.
enjoy that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. All right, we'll put the links to all those sites you mentioned. I'd highly recommend everyone to go on the website. There's an enormous amount of downloadable products that Laura generously offers on different topics. And yeah, great to bring this discussion topic to the table. Hopefully not the last time, but we'll see how it goes. So thank you for being on the ET project.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me today. I hope it's been informative.
It has.
So what are you waiting for? Hit the subscribe button below and click on the bell icon so I can pop up in your feed occasionally with a great tip for your ultimate growth.